So welcome to the A to Z of Human Performance with your host, Chris Lissaman, and resident expert, Jonna Sercombe.
Welcome to the A to Z of Human Performance live show. I'm Chris Lissaman. I'm going to be your host for these 20 sessions throughout January. I'm part of interactive workshops and delighted to be here for these sessions. We're treating this as a bit of a radio show style thing. I've got Jonna here with me. How are you doing, Jonna?
I'm doing really, really well. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me along.
Good, good. And you can just listen in. Perhaps you're on your lunch. Perhaps you're squaring away some work. Getting that done on Monday. And feel free to put your camera on, switch it off. But listen in. It should be an entertaining and insightful experience.
Yeah, which is ironic for interactive workshops. It's actually not an interactive workshop. It's just a live show. So we're going to follow the Chris Moyles
change our name
approach. Yeah, interactive, non-interactive, not a workshop.
That's great. And Happy New Year, Jonna.
Thank you very much.
How's your start to the year been?
Yeah, it's been good. I'm excited to get back to work. I mean, holidays are great, aren't they? But then it's time to get going again. And
absolutely. I think this year especially, we've been raring to get going. There's not a lot else to do.
There's nothing else to do. We might as well get down to it.
But you've been busy writing a book. Tell us about the book that you've written with Emma Wiggs and Steve Eaton.
Well, first of all, we've written a book, and I think that deserves some applause. Whoa, there we go. Have you got that?
Got that. There we go.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be launching a book at the start of the year. I sat down during the pandemic with a couple of real experts and we wrote this book, The A to Z of Human Performance. And it came out of this realization. We've been working together on some leadership programs, and we realized that people across lots of different genres have many thinking patterns and values in common. And so we wanted to look at what is the intersection of high performance in sport, in work and in life. And I took a risk, and I asked Emma and Steve if they would consider writing a book together. And then, like very busy people, we didn't do that for a while. And then during lockdown, at some point, as you just mentioned, we got bored, and then we thought, let's write this book. And so we had some writing meetings where we got together and discussed what we thought was important in life. And as we did that, then different themes emerged, and we ended up with 26 chapters, which we decided to turn into an A to Z. So yeah, that's what we got up to, and it's really exciting. That book will be launching on the 1st of February. And
Jonna, you mentioned you wrote the book with Steve and Emma Wiggs. What made you want to write with them?
Well, as I say, I worked with them on a few leadership programs, but Emma is an 8 times para canoe world champion and a Paralympic gold medalist. And she was struck down by a virus when she was in her teenage years, lost the use of her arms and legs, recovered the use of her arms. And she's got an incredible story, but she now is obviously at the very top of her field in elite sport. And through working together with her, I've always been interested in how people get the best out of themselves in elite sport. And she is an extremely high-performing human being. And Steve, I work with also on a leadership program. He works with the British Army. He works with Help for Heroes. He's actually got a very interesting military history, which I won't go into too much because he didn't like to talk about that. But he now works as a stress, trauma, and resilience expert. For example, when the London Bridge attacks happened, he was asked then to go and do some consulting work with the police who had to deal with that situation. When he works with high-performance surgeons who carry out brain surgery, helping them manage their emotions and performance as they cut into people's heads and might actually, cut the wrong bit. So he's a really interesting guy, and I've worked with him. He's been my coach actually over the last couple of years, helping me in the work that I do.
And of course, they've got gold medals, they've got MBEs. You've only got an MBE at the end of your name because of your surname.
Yeah, it's good spelling, isn't it? I was going to put an extra space in there in the book.
Yeah, you should throw that in, but you're in good company there.
It's the right spelling. Was that a joke from you, Chris Lissaman? Is that a joke?
No, you got a soundboard effect for that.
A sound effect for that. Very good stuff.
Lovely. And this is the first of 5 sessions this week. As I've said, we're here every weekday in January. Attitude at altitude is our theme today. Tomorrow we've got Big on Belief. Wednesday's theme is culture creation. Drives and desire will be what we're focusing on Thursday, and then elevating endurance closes out the week. Jonna, you looking forward to getting stuck into these topics?
Well, January is a great time to refocus, isn't it? I mean, to think about what we're going to do in the year. I'm not a great one for New Year's resolutions. I think every day you can try and live your best life. And if there's something that's important, don't wait till January to start it. But equally, the truth will get out if we really commit to something or not. And it's very, very easy to come up with something that's notionally important that we actually don't follow through on. So yeah, I'm excited this week. There's some really key topics there that the successful people focus on, and we're going to be exploring those.
So let's get stuck into attitude at altitude, Jonna. We know attitude is important, but what is it?
Well, I don't think you can exactly define what attitude is, but it's something about our commitment, our self-motivation, our confidence, the level of optimism we might have, our enthusiasm. There's whether we're honest, there's a few, I guess, values or behaviors that come out of our attitude. But the people I most respect on this that I've worked with often also talk about our posture. Our posture to life. That the attitude could also be described as an angle. If a plane is flying and it's got a certain attitude, it's how much its nose is dipping up or dipping down. So I guess as a human being, our attitude could be how much our nose is in the air, how much our shoulders are back, how much we approach life positively, and to what extent we kind of put ourselves out there to some extent. That's, I guess, what I would see as our attitude. But I mean, you can see the effects of attitude in everybody, can't you? Whether you walk into a shop and you're about to pay for something. I know at my local corner store, there's one lady who's always extremely happy and welcoming and knows the names of my children. There are other people there that have never bothered to make any interaction at all. So you can kind of see how that attitude shows up in different situations. And yeah, we're quite, I think, culturally quite used to thinking about attitude.
And in the book, you talk about it being a foundation for your performance. And the whole book is about the peak of human performance, how we can maximize it. What is it that some humans do with their attitude that others don't, that means they outperform them?
Well, I think it's probably one of the key themes overall that we explored. And we actually were going to call the book something like The Power to Choose. But attitude is one of those things that you can choose pretty much all of the time. In Man's Search for Meaning, I've got this very good book here, but in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl says, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedom, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances and to choose one's own way. And I think, actually, there are moments where we actually can't choose our attitude, when we're really upset or really hurt or we're ill, really ill, or something really bad's gone wrong. Our attitude we're not completely within our control. But it is one of the very, very few things that we can choose nearly all of the time. And if we're able to work out for ourselves how to make a choice about our attitude, then in all kinds of challenges, in all kinds of situations that face us, something that's within our control that we can do something about is our attitude and our approach or our posture to the situations that we face. So it's vitally important because it goes across everything. It's not just nutrition or something which is just about what we eat, but attitude goes across our whole approach to life and our life philosophy. And it's something therefore that nearly all the times we can choose.
Yeah, it's an important theme through the book to choose your attitude and to choose how you live your whole life and therefore affect your performance. Are we just saying with attitude it's about positivity, or is there more to it than that?
It's a really good question. Is it just about positivity? And I fundamentally don't think it is, actually, Chris. I think, it's actually really important to understand what frustrates us, what's going wrong in our lives, what's difficult at work, what we're not good at, what we don't enjoy. So some people would try and choose a positive attitude as a kind of sticking plaster over a lot of other things. Let's say you've got a job that you hate. Well, every day you could wake up and say, I'm going to be positive today and I'm going to go into work. Well, if that's the only job that you can get and the only job available, that is maybe what you need to do. But if you're really not enjoying something, then it's also worth thinking about how you can change the situation you're in. For example, imagine choosing your attitude as a muscle. You don't want to wear it out by pointlessly choosing your attitude in a lot of difficult situations that you don't need to be in. So there are other factors involved, holistic factors and choices that we can make. But it isn't about being relentlessly positive. I think it's being able to be relentlessly positive when you need to and being able to choose that attitude in the moment. And Emma talks about a great part of her process of being an elite athlete. She's got a training partner, and her training partner used to sometimes do things to deliberately wind her up. And she went to see the British canoeing sports psychologist about it. And they said, Emma, you are choosing to let this annoy you. And she's like, no, I'm not choosing to let this annoy me. This person is deliberately trying to wind me up. It's like, yeah, but you are choosing to let them wind you up. No, I'm not choosing this. I'm not choosing this. They are deliberately winding me up. They said, no, you can actually choose how you respond to that. You can just say, you can decide, no, okay, I'm not going to let it bother me. And, that is what this, that's what the really elite people, that's what the real high performers are able to do, is that they're able to choose their response and their attitude, their posture to a very wide variety of situations, and to do it consistently. And I think those two things combined together are extremely powerful.
Yeah, I think that's where we really see that power of choice matter, is where you're faced with that situation that's potentially quite difficult, potentially quite challenging, and you're able to change how it affects you just by choosing to not let it affect you.
Yeah. No, I mean, even this last year, we've had this pandemic. It's been really difficult for so many people. And our company, as you know, was extremely challenged. We fly people around the world to get together in groups. It's like we would be the super spreaders if we were allowed to be. But, I said to myself, well, let's burn the company down then. Let's just enjoy this. If there was a quote I was using, which is from Thomas Edison, when his light bulb factory caught fire, and he said to his son, go and get your mother and all her friends and bring them to have a look at this, because this is the greatest bonfire you're ever going to see. And I genuinely did think, if we're going to have a really challenging year, I'm just going to enjoy it. If the whole company doesn't survive, then that's going to be fine. And it's going to be part of life experience. And I'm going to do it with a smile on my face, and not in any weird or masochistic way, but it's just like, if life brings you this, sometimes you've just got to go with it. As it was, we survived and we had one of our best years ever. And I think that's partly because a lot of other people in the company were also choosing their attitude as well. But yeah, it's a really fascinating area. And I think, as you know, I mean, you've had setbacks yourself this year. When you have setbacks, it's really difficult sometimes to access that positive choice. But if we can demonstrate humility or kindness, or positivity or enthusiasm or integrity at the moments that are most difficult, then we learn a lot about ourselves.
Yeah, and you mentioned that challenge of the last year, and it's been challenging for a lot of us. I'm sure everyone in this call has found it in some way challenging. How do we sustain our attitude through times like that?
I see it a lot as a bit like core work in fitness. So, if you try and get really fit, but you don't work on your core strength, then eventually you're going to get injured. But also your performance is going to be impeded because you're not building from a strong base. And I think when it comes to our attitude, I think in a pandemic, or, if we lose our jobs, or if we get sick, I think we then find out, what core habits we built up over the preceding 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And if we've been constantly choosing our positive attitude and choosing enthusiasm and choosing honesty and choosing bravery, if we've been choosing these things for a long time, then when the really difficult moments hit, it's actually not that difficult for us to access some of that. But if we have been moaning, for example, or whining or complaining or lying or cheating, or blaming others is probably one of the biggest ones, isn't it? When something happens to us and we try and make it other people's faults, then if we've been choosing those, then when something difficult happens, we're swamped because we haven't got those core skills in place. And I think sometimes it's easy to look at other people and say, yeah, I can identify that in a coworker. I know a coworker who doesn't take responsibility when something bad happens. But if we can identify it in them, then we can also look at ourselves and say, yeah, well, I must do that sometimes. How can I improve on that core discipline?
And the book, of course, isn't just about work. It's about all of life. Actually, how do we perform in everything that we do? I want to ask a little bit about your home life, John. Obviously, you've got wife, 2 kids at home. What do you bring to your home life in terms of your attitude?
Well, you have to ask my wife and kids about that. I was actually going to try and get them on board the show, but they couldn't be bothered. It
would have been entertaining.
There's now homeschooling in the UK, so they're hard at work. I think, they say that we can be most difficult with those that we love the most sometimes. And I think I was preparing for this show today. I was thinking about the most difficult moments. And I think it's, for example, complaining at home to somebody at home, whether to one of the children or to Steph. I think with those that we're closest to all the time, it can be easiest to find them difficult. And we see this with our bosses as well. our bosses are mostly pretty reasonable people, but if we work with them over a long period of time, or if we're close to them, sometimes things they do annoy us. I think there's those small moments where I could complain or moan or feel self-pity or be selfish at home. Let's say there's a dinner plate that needs putting in the dishwasher. It's as simple as that, isn't it? I could think, why hasn't someone else put that in the dishwasher? Or I could put it in the dishwasher. Or I could recognize that it's not anyone's fault. It's everyone's choice. And that if I would like them to choose, then I should also lead that by choosing. So I think, there's a lot of small things at home. I think there's, sometimes some difficult moments in a relationship, in any relationship, where we can choose how we respond to our partner. And if we can not choose the selfish route, but choose the generous one, I think that is, those are the most challenging things to do well.
Yeah, I've got the book here, and there's a line in that I just found interesting, that it's in Steve Eaton's written the first chapter, and he said, our attitude is vital in leading a meaningful and fulfilling life. And I just thought it was interesting in terms of outside of work, how do you maintain your attitude in terms of how does it fulfill your life?
Yeah, it's a self-sustaining thing, isn't it? I mean, positivity is contagious. I do believe that. And I think I'm very careful in curating as much as I can how much time I put into a lot of things. And I've got quite a lot of boundaries in terms of what I won't do or what we'll do in terms of time. I think many people get themselves into a time poor situation or an energy poor situation. And again, the pandemic has shown a lot of people that's a bad idea. There's nothing wrong with having some spare time. There's nothing wrong with not having anything to do. Actually, this recharges you. And if we run in the red too often, if our diary is out of our own control, but in the control of others, and we can't keep up with all the commitments we've made, I think we become a victim to life's events. So people might describe me as a bit boring, I don't do a lot. I've got my family life. I've got some good friends. I've got some sports, and I run a company, but I do know that running a company requires a lot of energy, and you can only spend that once. So, yeah, I think choosing how you approach that area outside of work is vital, and it's all this kind of symbiotic, holistic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I think of my commute into work when I actually do get to come into the office. It's an hour and a half each way, and that is a moment for me where I definitely choose my attitude. And I could complain and could moan and could just waste it, but actually choose to embrace it as a time to switch off, or a time to get a bit of work done on the way in, or time to read a book, or it's just it can be valuable time.
Yeah,
your attitude is right.
You've got a frame for it. Do you know, I remember a conversation we had when you decided to move, instead of being 10 minutes from the office on a walk, to move an hour and a half away. I might have said I don't ever want to hear any moaning.
Yeah, I think you do.
But that's because I don't like moaning. But I think, I think that boundary helps people also, doesn't it, to choose. You've got your parameters, and you've done an exceptional job of in all the tricky situations I've known you, of choosing the right attitudinal path. But many people on those trains that you're on, I'm sure, are kind of frustrated, or then it's late and then they're annoyed, and then there's a passenger they don't like, and then their Kindles run out. For those of us that would like to moan, there's no lack of things to moan about. I was thinking about these people that are trying to run this government right now, trying to get us through a pandemic. On my Facebook, someone's really complaining about Matt Hancock. And I'm thinking, man, if you must be able to empathize with how hard it is to be a health or an education secretary or PM, or, the people who are trying to ship a vaccine out or run COVID testing. These are phenomenally difficult jobs that there's no way you're not trying to do your best. But there's a whole group of people that would like to moan about that. And, but they should take responsibility for their actions as well. Their moaning has an impact on others, and it's a very contagious. Moaning is a very contagious and not very productive social virus, isn't it? It doesn't really help anybody.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will try to change the attitude and behaviour of others before they'll look at themselves. What would you say if someone is struggling in that situation, where perhaps it's not the health secretary, but perhaps it's their colleague that they're frustrated with the attitude of? Can we actually change the attitude of other people?
Well, I think we're into a very risky area now. Someone used to describe it to me as an extra grace person, which is that we all have an extra grace person. someone that we should apply extra grace towards. But we're all also someone else's extra grace person. So, maybe, someone might annoy you, but you might annoy someone else as well. I think on a deeper level, I think we do want to be careful with how we go about our interactions with other people. And I do think we should be very careful about trying to change someone else's attitude. I'm not sure it's something that's our job. I think that's their job. And if we make it our job, it can be detrimental to the relationship. However, a bit like Apple's incredible magnetic charging, or what's that? Is it MagSafe? I don't know what it's called. But anyway, there's a lot of things you can now magnetize to your iPhone, and it will charge it and it will connect. I think it's a bit like that. I think, we can have an impact on others through our own actions. So you're turning up to work every day without moaning about your commute. That has an effect that you can't see on others. And if you get sufficient people together that have the same kind of attitudes and values, that creates a culture. And you can actually put someone quite difficult into that culture and they will actually be changed by it. So I think the best way is through induction or through, non-direct interventions with others. But if you know someone well, I mean, there are some times, aren't there, to say, actually, can we have a chat about this? I've got a friend who is a mentor of mine, and she'll say to me very gently, John, I'd like to bring this to you for your consideration. I'd like to bring it to you gently and openly, and then she'll share some feedback. But she doesn't say to me, you've got to change, and this is wrong, this is what's going wrong with you. And I think maybe that's how we should work on these things with other people, which is through modeling ourselves, through, occasional offering as necessary, but in an open-handed way, that this is something for them to take, and if they would like to, for them to choose.
Yeah, I think that framing is essential, isn't it? It's not always right to hit it straight on, but actually you can gently do it. And like you say, the best way to do it is through this sort of magnetism, just culturally embodying that attitude.
Yeah, and we all know people that are like that, and some people have got more of that even to give off than they need. So, there's certain people that will turn up every day and just bring more than they need. And I think if we're in surplus in terms of our attitude and we've got that to bring, then let's bring it. If we were working in the health service right now, I would be stopping every day and making sure that I did arrive at work with a full positive attitude and really bringing that. And to respect those also that are having a really challenging time. And again, like, not everyone enjoys their work, and sometimes it's difficult, but we just want to make sure that we're doing the best we can for those around us.
Absolutely. And coming back to the book, each chapter finishes with a set of habituators. Tell us a bit about those. I'm not even sure that's a word.
No, I might have made that up in a hurry. But I mean, it's like an actuator. It's like, a habituator is something that helps us to form habits. Yeah, we put a few of those in there. And in this first chapter, Attitude at Altitude, these are kind of little tips and things we could try. There's a couple in there, and I think we've discussed one, but one of them is triggers. I think that we can trigger our attitude positively. Quite often on the way into work, I might stop for a coffee, and I don't really need to have a coffee on the way into work because I had a coffee at home and there's a coffee machine at work. But I use that moment as a trigger, a break between leaving home and getting here, just to have a few thoughts, especially if I've got a day where I've got to lead, I've got to be, on top of things, to make sure that I turn up right. But I had a boss who used to use these triggers, a guy called Kev. When I was at BMW, he used to drive around a roundabout twice on the way into work as he was coming into Bracknell. And if you're working in Bracknell, I tell you, you need to choose a positive attitude. But he was a really positive guy. And I said to him, how do you stay positive? How do you turn up? And he said, I choose it before I get here. I go around this roundabout. And then when I arrive at work, I want to be positive. And he was relentlessly like that. And we would always listen to a song in the morning. He would put on Beautiful Day by U2 and we'd get charged up.
Great song.
So it's a great song. But, there's triggers, there's things we can do. And again, sports people use these kind of triggers. The military use these triggers. Performers in the West End use these triggers. They have triggers that they can press to get themselves in performance mode. And if we're sliding into an hour of email, there's probably a trigger we can use to get us in the zone.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's triggers. For example, on my commute, that when I get to that train, that is a trigger for me to get into that mindset of, okay, I'm going to make this a productive hour and a half. Coming on to the coaching questions that are in the end of each section as well, Jonna. What's coaching all about? Yeah,
well, coaching is a very simple process where you ask a question and someone else has to think about their answer. but we've written down a few. And I think, in this area, one of the things we talked about is induction of attitude. But are there people you can copy? Who do you respect that you can copy? They say you can't outperform your inner circle. So if you're the most positive person if you're got the best attitude, look for some new friends, look for some new role models, go and find some people that are really good. I was watching Marcus Rashford play football at the weekend, and I was just thinking all that he's done in terms of getting food to kids. And then he's still got to play football and he's still got to perform at a high level. And he just strolls onto that pitch as humble as anyone I've ever seen, with so much weight on his shoulders outside of work. And he just works hard for the team and he's in the right place and he does the right things. And I actually had a bit of an emotional moment, a near to tears moment, thinking like that kid has come from nothing, has achieved his footballing dreams and then used that to help other people. I was really inspired. So he's going to be one of my role models for this year. I'm going to try and choose to have the attitude like Marcus Rashford, and hopefully that will help me improve in the generosity of using what I've got to help others.
Yeah, it's absolutely an inspiring story, and it's been inspiring over the past year to have that example to look to. Just one final question for me, Jonna. I just want to ask, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I don't know, Chris. I think the cumulative effect of a life well lived is probably what gets me out of the bed. I do wake up before the alarm, and actually over Christmas I was a bit naughty and I ate a bit of the stuff I shouldn't do, and I stayed up late looking at my phone and all the stuff I don't normally do. And basically I started waking up later and later, and then I didn't have the motivation for life. But yesterday I went out for a 220 kilometer cycle ride, and I was meeting a socially distanced exercise buddy to do that. But surprise, surprise, there it was again, like 6 o'clock in the morning, wide awake. And this morning again before the alarm. So I think, having a life well lived gets you up. And maybe that's also one thing to pay attention to if we're really struggling to get up in the morning, to think about what changes we can make so that we're living the life we want to live rather than living the life the hand that's dealt us. And I guess that the cumulative choices we make stack up, and we can choose many of those as well. Whereas again, Emma demonstrates when something comes along you can't change, like she's paralyzed. She never mentions it. She never mentions it. She can't, there's certain things she can't do. She just cracks on with things she can do. And that's, again, great inspiration. We're nearly out of time there, Chris, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
Left. Did we get any questions in the chat? Or we?
No questions in the chat. So I think people have been happily listening in. And if you do have any, just drop them into the chat. But we are a couple of minutes from wrapping up. But all that's left to say is thanks very much for joining us. Yeah, hope you'll join us tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to be here every day at 1:30, and we're going to try and get him and Steve on board. We're also welcome for some other guests. So if there's someone exciting like Mike Denby, who's also got an elite sport background, and you want to join us, then drop Chris a line. And of course, so we're going to be here every day at 1:30, and we're going to try and make this a little bit like a radio show for people who are slightly bored at home and maybe haven't got anything better to do. But it's going to be inspirational, and we're going to be bringing it. And then at the end of the month, 1st of February, is the launch of the A to Z of Human Performance book. Is that it?
Tomorrow's theme is Big on Belief, so join us for that one if that interests you. Johnny, looking forward to sharing a bit about Big on Belief.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I've really enjoyed today. Thank you very much, Chris. And I'm going to play us out with our
Thank you.
creators. So thanks everybody for joining in.